It is the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. Matthew Rocchio, Randy Karraker with you. I don't know about you. I'm just trying to keep my email and my Twitter just updated. I'm refreshing all the time because Robert Thomas's name keeps bouncing around in trade rumors. Yesterday it was Utah. Today it's the Buffalo Sabres. Who will it be tomorrow? Matthew, I find, first of all, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I find it interesting, and I'm the only one that finds this interesting, that the two teams most closely associated with a trade for Robert Thomas both have general managers that were former assistant general managers in St. Louis.
Interesting.
Bill Armstrong, of course, with the Utah Mammoth, was Doug Armstrong's assistant GM for years here in St. Louis before he took the job in Arizona and the Coyotes moved to Utah and became the Mammoth. And Jarmo Kekalainen, who was the Blues assistant GM, made a lot of the draft choices. He was the one that drafted Berglund and Oshie and Backus and that gang, and left quite a while ago to join the Columbus Blue Jackets, and obviously wound up ultimately with Buffalo as their general manager. But it's teams with hockey ops leaders that used to be with the Blues that are most interested, at least according to media reports, in Robert Thomas.
Yeah, more trades being thrown out for Robert Thomas. And I get the feeling that, at least listening to the other fans around some of these trades and some of these teams, that we have a very different view of Robert Thomas as people who have watched him kind of grow and, I don't know, look at the stats, than other fan bases do, because every time I've seen people throw out the three top 15 picks and or respective prospects for Robert Thomas, I see a lot of essential scoffing coming from fans outside of St. Louis. And that surprises me, because when you take into every piece of consideration of what Robert Thomas is, what his contract is, his production, all of those things, at no point is 3 top 15 prospects a large ask for Robert Thomas. It is a 100% fair ask for a type of player who never comes up on trades. Full stop.
100%. No question. And I think that if people dig deep and look at the fact that you have a 26-year-old who has a history of winning, he's won a Stanley Cup. Last year, after Four Nations, he was the leading scorer in the league. So in a world of what have you done for me lately, he has done it lately. And he's a guy that has a great contract for the NHL. As the salary cap continues to rise, his contract will look better and better and better. And other general managers, people around the league, understand where the Blues are. So it's one thing if management people don't understand. I think they do, and that's why we're hearing what we're hearing. And if the fans don't get it, the fans don't get it. And hey, not every fan is going to get it. Not every fan is going to be very well educated about every player in the league. I'm not. But here's the one thing that Pierre LeBrun wrote in a missive at The Athletic within the last hour. Quote, "The price remains sky high for Blues center Robert Thomas as of Tuesday, and I mean, it should. Number one centers who are 26 years old and signed to a term on a decent contract almost never become available on the trade market. So I don't blame St. Louis one bit for asking what sounds like a huge price." Colleagues Darren Dreger and Chris Johnston reported Tuesday afternoon about the Buffalo Sabres' keen interest in Thomas. Given Josh Norris struggles to stay healthy, this makes sense on a host of levels for the Sabres. As mentioned before, the Utah Mammoth are also among the teams in conversations with St. Louis on Thomas. So here you've got one of the preeminent hockey writers and insiders in the entire sport saying that the price remained high for Thomas, and it should. I would just recommend that all of those fans of other teams that don't really appreciate what Robert Thomas is, just go read Pierre LeBrun. And you know what? If you don't want your team to get him and somebody else winds up with him, that's fine, as long as the Blues get what they want to get for him.
And it's just, he signed the deal when it was a flat cap.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, what team you're a fan of, if you think the Blues are being homers. If a player signed their deal when the cap was flat and they have produced at an even 80% level since then, and they happen to be as young as Robert Thomas is, their value is sky high. That is a full stop thing. It doesn't matter what your opinions are, Robert Thomas. That's just a true fact. No one's talking with rose-colored glasses. That's just a fact as the NHL is currently made.
100%.
Like that's just
Yeah.
is what it is. And so the people thinking this is too much for Robert Thomas, it's crazy. If Robert Thomas gets moved, it will be for that. Bottom line.
Yeah. And I really do think that the Blues are going to hold out. They've been pretty steadfast. They started by saying, yeah, we aren't trading Robert
Why
Thomas.
wouldn't they?
Right.
Like there's no reason to there are no reasons they have to trade him. And therefore you have to pay a lot for him.
Yeah.
That was the situation with like the Cardinals and Brendan Donovan. This is it to the umpteenth. I mean, this is to the nth degree of the Robert Thomas situation compared to like a recent St. Louis situation. They hold all the power. They hold all the leverage. They hold all the value. If you want them, come get them, but you better bring a haul.
Now, another story that is broken, I don't know if it's a story that's broken, but another comment that has been made on the social media comes from former NHL player, agent, GM, assistant GM, now broadcaster for NHL Network, Brian Lawton, who tweets this afternoon, the Blues appear ready to move on from Jordan Binnington. 16-team no-trade list is in play, but feels like a move is a foregone conclusion at this stage with where the St. Louis Blues are heading in the near term. I still can't figure out who the team or teams that would be interested in Jordan Binnington today are. Obviously, he's a guy that can win for you, but if you look around the league, who's the team that's either in the playoffs or in the playoff hunt that would benefit greatly from giving up somewhat of a premium to get Jordan Binnington on their team? I'm trying to figure, and I'm not saying that I'm right here, that there isn't a team out there. I'm just trying to figure out who it is.
I mean, there's some teams here that could definitely use it. I mean, let's look at the if you're talking about the wild card race right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sabres, they've let in 181 goals this year. What's their goalie situation look like right now? I mean, that's
they got our old buddy, don't they?
Yeah, they do. That probably won't work. I'm trying to think about how you could juice up the deal. You make it Robert Thomas and Jordan Binnington. You make a big giant deal, bunch of first round picks, bunch of prospects like they have. The Wings are up there for the same reason. They're the highest ranked team in the East. In fact, they're the only team in the top 10 in the East that has a negative goal differential.
Mm-hmm.
So they could certainly use a little bit of a defensive punch. The Canadians are always a team that's thrown out there, but people then wonder about the cap situation and can the Canadians actually pull off that situation? That's a big question that a lot of people have. And then
with a team like Montreal, they're interesting because they want to win now, but they also don't want to mess around with their future. So I could see Montreal because Montembeault is not what they thought at least he doesn't appear to be what they thought he was going to be. But what does Montreal have to give up? I guess they could give up a pick for the Blues, and by the way, as we mentioned, Binnington with the 16-team no trade, I don't know if he would use that or if Montreal would be on his list. But right now they've got Dobis, who's got a 2.92, 893 save percentage. Montembeault, as we mentioned, 3.37 goals against. So, yeah, they could use a big game guy, but I wonder if they would have what the Blues would want in return, because the Blues don't want to give away Jordan Binnington. They aren't doing a salary dump here.
No, when we talked about it yesterday, they can wait till the offseason when Bobrovsky's out there potentially for a team to nap that isn't the Panthers. But if they do stay with Bobrovsky and there is a team out there that says, okay, free agency class isn't good, we're not going to be able to upgrade our forward, our defenseman because the free agency class is trash, we'll go with upgrading our goaltending a little bit. Let's make a trade for Jordan Binnington. They still have that option.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be an option either. It's tough to find that balance. We've been doing it for the last week of team that needs him, team that can fit him, team that has the actual bullets in the chamber to get it done this year. Eline says Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, they are top in the East right now.
They go for it.
They have the profile of a team that would go for it. And if you look at the goaltending they've got right now, yeah, Bussy and Anderson have been sharing the load, 28 and 24 starts respectively. Bussy's put up a 2.23 goals against average in his 28 starts, whereas Anderson has put up a 3.16 in his 24 starts. He has, though, gotten tagged for 11 of their 16 losses this season.
And one thing we don't know about Jordan Binnington is where he would be willing to go.
Yeah.
Would he, with 16 teams on his no trade, does
he'd
he
be willing?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
If they're the first team in the East, he will be. Yeah. If the team's going to be a winning team, I firmly believe it doesn't matter where they are. Well, Jordan Binnington will be happy to play for them.
I don't know if this works so that the Blues go to him and say, okay, who are your 16 teams? Or if he already has an established 16 teams.
It's just the playoff rankings.
Yeah. So, and even if the team would be on his list or not be on his list or be on his list of no trade, the Blues can always go to him and say, hey, I know this team isn't on the list, but would you be willing to accept a deal to this place for the next year and a half? And then what if it doesn't work? What if he becomes Ryan Miller for the rest of the season?
Don't put that on him.
Well, I'm just saying because he's got a year left on the contract. Do you want to go to a place where if it doesn't work out this year, you're kind of stuck with each other for the year after that? And does he want to bounce?
As long as I'm getting paid $6 million. As long as I'm getting paid $6 million. Hey, I took a shot at it. I got traded to a team that's supposed to make a playoff run. I took a shot at it. I think I don't know if you're Jordan Binnington, why look past the getting traded to a top 3 team and going on a potential Stanley Cup run?
Jordan Binnington has a ring and he has his money.
But it's Jordan Binnington. You know he's insane about this stuff. All he wants to do is keep winning. Do you know how pissed off he looked when they gave him the silver?
Yeah. So let me ask this question then, because you know of him as well as I do. What will be more important to him? Going to Raleigh, North Carolina to be without his family for April, May, June, got a youngster and a new wife and a family here in St. Louis. Is it more important for him to be around his family or to chase a ring with Carolina?
Oh, he can get his family to Carolina. I think
that happens in a week all the time.
They can get him there eventually. It's not like he has a newborn or anything like that.
That's fair. My impression is that
because he wants to win.
Because everybody wants to win, but he's already won.
But he's crazy about it, and it's not enough for him.
But okay, but then you have to say, okay, he has to know that he's in a place where he can win a Stanley Cup this year. And he obviously he could be.
First team in the East has got to feel like a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
If we're just talking about the Hurricanes. High Definition says the Penguins. Penguins is interesting because they have 3 goals. They've played 3 goalies a chunk of games this year, but all of them have sub 3 goals against average, which tells me they have a killer defense. Do they value a potential upgraded goaltender enough to give you what you really need to move Jordan Binnington?
Do they have?
Because I think that'd be
do they have enough cap room?
Yeah, that's another thing. Is Pittsburgh's always going to question is do they have enough cap room because
they already traded Jari, right?
Yeah. So I mean they're doing a pretty good job with the group of tenders they have right now.
And remember, they don't have Sidney Crosby for the month either.
Yeah, that's true.
So that might if you're going to trade good young talent or assets, you have to say, okay, is this guy going to offset the loss of Sidney Crosby to our team?
Yes, and to that point, they are right now tied for 5th in the East. They are tied at 75 points with the Canadiens and Islanders. The Bruins have 71 points. The Capitals and Blue Jackets have 69 and 68. So there is a pretty tight run right now in the East. At the same time, they are tied. There are the 3rd and 4th place teams in the East also have 76 points. So there's a jumble there. But Pittsburgh would like to obviously stay on the top half of that jumble. So maybe that's not something they pull away from, to your point, as they're drawn a little bit thin right now. And again, why if that's one of your strong suits, if you're like a 2nd or 3rd seed, I could see you saying, listen, we have a great defense, but the goaltenders we need somebody who can stand on their head in the playoffs. Maybe you make that run. But if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins team that's like 6th or 7th in the East, maybe that's not where you pull the trigger.
Yeah. Now, the guys that will probably get traded aren't even being mentioned today. And there's like 8 or 10 teams that are being associated with Justin Falk. It's remarkable, actually, how many teams seem to be interested in him. And that includes Boston, Vegas, Ottawa, Carolina. They're all over the place. And the other one is Braden Shen. Now, why Toronto is being talked about as a team that would go hire or trade for a 34-year-old guy with 3 years left on his contract, I don't know. But it's being talked about.
That's just what happens when that's what's happening when there's a lot of hockey to talk about in Toronto.
Yeah.
They got to find people to talk about. I do want to. We got something here from High Definition who says, I figure any trade with Binner will mean the Blues keeping some of his salary. I honestly think, and we talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago, that the Blues retaining makes a lot of sense. But despite it making a lot of sense, after talking to some people, I have to admit that I would be surprised if it actually happened. Mm-hmm. Because, of course, it makes sense. You retain a little salary. That changes the pick you get from Justin Falk from a second rounder to a first rounder. You retain a little bit of salary on Jordan Binnington. It changes the third rounder. You're going to get to a second rounder. Those are all deals that are smart to make. But it's just, do you have the ownership groups that's like, yeah, I'm willing to pay $3 million for the difference between a third and a second rounder?
There you go.
Do you have that ownership right now? Will you ever have that ownership outside of maybe some of the bigger markets when it comes to the NHL? That's a big question the Blues have to ask. Yes, there's undoubtedly, if we were just playing the video game, retaining salary makes a ton of sense for the Blues to add a little value, add a little punch to this trade deadline. But living in the real world, the people I've talked to would be a little bit surprised if it happened, especially if it's anything significant, like actually up to the 50% threshold that you can retain. Mm-hmm. I just don't see it happening. But undoubtedly, it would be a move that a franchise in this situation could utilize. It just might not be this franchise who does it.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we have to look at here, we have to be cognizant of the fact that now from an organizational standpoint, if they move Thomas and Binnington and Falk and Shen, if they would get rid of all of those guys or half of those guys, that's the second time in 4 years that you have cleared guys out and been a seller as you tear it down. Obviously, you will have misread what you thought you were a couple of years ago when you moved O'Reilly and Tarasenko and Barbashev and that gang. And what you replace those guys with isn't working. So now you're going to have to put another nucleus in place, especially if Robert Thomas and or Jordan Kyrou go, because those were the guys that were supposed to be the next nucleus.
Yeah, I look at maybe that decision making and how it's fallen to today a little bit differently if they end up trading Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. Because if they don't trade those guys, I don't think they made a ton of moves that set themselves back in the reset. It's just last year was a little bit of false hope, and that can happen sometimes. But I don't think they made a ton of moves where they gave up first round picks or anything where they hampered themselves in the rebuild. It's just that it's going to go from a 2-year rebuild to a 4-year rebuild. And that's the big difference. And if that happens, it's unfortunate, but I think this is a team that has continually planned and given themselves outs of certain situations. Obviously, the Pavel Buchnevich contract is not a very good example of that. Some of their contracts have the potential to paint them into bad corners financially, but the team building, I think, has always kept them fairly flexible. And that's why we can see they're at another trade deadline where they can pivot, get better, acquire assets, and make something happen down the road, because we can see in the organization as they've built up players that if you give them time down the road, they can draft and develop, as we were talking about yesterday.
But they need to do a great job of that, because Buffalo's been in that situation now for 20 years. And you don't want to just keep getting rid of your veteran guys and saying, okay, well, we're going to draft more young guys. And then you get rid of more veteran guys. And you say, we're going to draft more young guys. Eventually, that's got to stop, and you've got to start supplementing your good kids, and you got to get good kids with veteran players.
I think I'd feel a little bit different if, they had multiple top 5 picks and failed to put it together the way that Buffalo had. But they're putting it together. I mean, they're developing guys who are mid-round picks and picks in the 20s and things like that. And so it feels a little different, and my willingness to give them a little bit more leash feels a little bit different than a team that's constantly getting top 5 picks and can't seem to draft, develop, and put it together after a 5 or 10 year run.
See, and the way I'm looking at it is actually from a fan's standpoint.
That's fair.
How much are fans going to put up with a team that didn't make the playoffs a couple of years ago, made the playoffs, got knocked out in the first round last year, second worst record in the league this year? How long is the Blues fan base going to stick with a rebuild? And if it's a 4-year rebuild and you tell everybody a 4-year rebuild, I would think there's a lot of fans out there, season ticket buying fans, that'll say, call me in 4 years. If we're going to do a 4-year rebuild, I'll watch on TV, but I'm not going to be spending $150 a ticket on a team that's not going to make the playoffs. Don't you think that's the case?
Who's spending $150 a ticket?
Oh, there's a lot of season tickets that are $150 a pop, brother.
I think to your point, there's always going to be a lot of fans, and probably the majority, who are never willing to dive in. But you have to play the long game when you're a business. And the only way you're going to get people paying $200 a night in season tickets is by becoming a winning franchise again. And we've just seen throughout the years, especially in mid-size markets, it is hard to build that 10 to 15 year sustainability by just sitting in the middle the entire time. You have to, at one point, not bottom out, but you have to at one point reset, give yourself another chance to get a generational or two player and make things happen. The Cardinals of the 2000s are not the Cardinals of the 2000s if they don't hit a gold mine in Albert Pujols.
Right.
And so to the Blues' chance, they've got a Dalibor Dvorsky, they got a Jake Neighbors, a Jimmy Snuggerud, but now you get the top 5 pick, and if you do hit a gold mine, now you can get things rolling again.
And that's if you do. How many gold mines have there been in the NHL? Now, right now, by the way,
David, Makar, Celebrini, bit of a
McKinnon.
McKinnon, thank you. Sagan didn't really do what he was incredible from the get-go. Neither Taylor Hall had a couple of really good years. I'm trying to think of other number 1 overall picks from the early 2000s, early 2010s.
Not Nail Yakupov.
Not Nail Yakupov, no. No.
A lot of times you just have to get lucky.
Yeah, you do.
Stamkos wound up being a stud.
Stamkos. You're never going to get Pittsburgh lucky.
Right.
You're never going to get Pittsburgh lucky. You can get Edmonton lucky, Draisaitl, and then McDavid.
See, that's a lot of bad hockey.
It's a lot of bad hockey, though. And so, and that's why the Blues having this season and then being able to reload next year with multiple young players who you have reason to be positive about. I can understand why fans aren't going to be there, but we have to accept the reality of what else is this franchise supposed to do? Just keep trying to chug along as an 8 seed in the playoffs every year. So because by that way lies failure and boredom for a lot of people.
Well, and so here's my point. If you're going to trade Robert Thomas, you have to be sure that you're getting better. You have to be sure that you're getting a center, 26 years old. He's right there in the prime of his career. You're trading him in the most important and highly productive slice of his career, 26 through 31. And you also have to get a guy that if you get a great player, you have to get a guy that doesn't cost $8 million a year. And now I think we're getting to that point where the bridge contract is going to get to pretty close to that point. And you have to get
Dylan Holloway. Hello, Dylan Holloway.
Yeah, right. There you go. So I just hope that the evaluation process here of whomever they would get for Thomas, if they would move him, would allow them to get a player as good as he is, because whoever gets him for this year is getting him to try to win this year. So you want to get a guy that's as good as he is in 3 years, plus some other assets that make your team better.
Yeah. That's how we framed out the potential Utah Mammoth trade.
Yep. And then give Gavin McKenna with the second pick in the draft.
That would also be nice. I don't want to get into the realities of how bad the draft lottery could completely screw the city of
It's
St.
happened
Louis.
before.
It has happened before. If they are a bottom 3 team this year and end up picking 7th, I will be so disappointed. Like there is a legitimate level of like there's so much potential excitement that could be just completely ripped away from this city just by a ping pong ball. Yeah. And that's why lotteries are smart, so that teams don't overtank, but lotteries suck when you're an ethical team that has to tank once every 20 years. And it would be nice if you could still get the number 1 overall pick like the NFL team does. It would be nice. It's nice in the NFL that you realize you suck. You go, okay, let's go get that number 1 overall pick, get us a quarterback. Let's go make sure that happens. Can't do that in the NHL. I get it. I understand. Mike Meyer points out and says draft simulations are consistently showing the 4th pick. Damn it.
Don't we have the 2nd worst record?
It's not good enough. Yeah, but you have the 2nd worst record. The way that the draft lottery is weighted in the NHL is a slightly different than the NBA, but the NBA is built so that you get the number 1 the worst team gets the 1st overall pick about 25% of the time. So when you factor in the math of like their they have the 2nd lowest chances or the 2nd highest chances to get the 1st overall pick, but then you factor in all the math, it's going to come out that they get a lot of 3rd and 4th overall picks. Okay. So the math sucks as usual. You've been fighting against it your entire life. We all hate it. It's stupid, but nonetheless, it has a chance to make us all very, very sad. And that's the really crappy part of this season is I want to be positive and be like, well, you're building up from the young players, and that's that's a great positive thing. All right, he sounds good. Now I'm not on camera anymore.
Sorry.
It's I want to be super positive. First of all, I'm running out of a little positivity because I have to be positive about young players developing now with the Cardinals, the Blues, and St. Louis City. I'm losing a little bit of my positivity. I'll be a little bit honest, but nonetheless, the draft lottery can kill all of my positivity, and that would really piss me off. If they're not a top 3 pick, I'll be quite sad. If they're not a top 2 pick, I'm honestly going to be kind of bummed out, mainly because I have to learn who the other people after first 1 and 2 are going to be, because right now Ivar Stenberg and Gavin McKenna are the only 2 prospects I've really chosen to learn about, and I don't really feel like doing any more reading about European players whose names I can only pronounce because their brother plays for the St. Louis Blues. Are we doing a little bit of a draft lottery right now?
This is not a draft lottery.
Okay.
This is a draft simulation.
This is a draft simulation. Okay.
This is ours. This is our highly technical draft simulation.
iReputation says the Rangers will get the 1st pick because the NHL always puts in the fix.
Okay, so
maybe one time the NHL put in a fix.
2006 or 2005? 2005, I think. Yeah.
Mike Myers has got me covered on learning the prospects. He's got you covered on learning the prospects as well. Check out all his work on STL Sports Central. Jeremy Haas says 12.4% in the draft lottery pick. Does that mean, are you saying, I understand the lottery odds, but I'm saying when you extrapolate them across the next 30 years, how often does the team with the worst draft pick, the worst record, get the 1st overall pick? Because with all the ways that picks are weighted and things like that in the NBA, it comes down to about 25% of the time the worst record gets the 1st overall pick. I'm wondering what it is when you extrapolate it, 30, 50, 1,000 simulations. I wonder what the number is.
Here's our first simulation
in the NHL.
I am the Canucks. I get the 3rd pick. You are the Blues.
This is not how the draft lottery works.
But this is the way that our simulation works.
Okay.
It's just as effective as any other simulation.
Let's go. Gavin McKenna's going to be a Blue.
There you go. See? Okay, let's do another simulation here. Okay.
Jeremy Hodge says 12.5% for the 1st overall pick.
I don't care about 12.
If that's what it is across all simulations,
I don't care about the math part of it.
Ooh, good job of the NHL, by the way. If they've built it that way, that's a good way to deter tanking. I hate you for it. But it's completely necessary. Tanking sucks. Not all teams are ethical tankers like the St. Louis Blues.
By the way, the only reason this doesn't work like the NHL is because I didn't have ping pong balls available.
Well,
okay, so here we go. I am going to be Vancouver, and I'm going to pick this one. 3 again. Okay, you're the Blues. This is another simulation. This is 2. What do we get?
We got 4.
Okay, I am then the Rangers. Rangers get the top pick.
Damn it, you're right.
And then the Blackhawks get.
High Definition was right. The Rangers are going to win the lottery. The fix is in.
Well, no, we're doing best of 3 here.
I feel like this simulation tells me you don't think much of lottery systems for sport picks.
Or simulations.
Or simulations.
Yeah, because you know what? We always hear about this. Well, we did 10,000 simulations. Well, you know what? We're working on 10,001 here.
Thank you for trying, Jeremy Hodge. I appreciate that.
We're working on, rather than simulations, you know what happens in the NFL or in the NHL lottery?
What's that?
Reality.
Okay.
It's not a simulation.
All right.
Okay, one more. You be Vancouver this time.
I'm gonna pick for Vancouver this time.
What do you got?
Man, Vancouver's getting screwed in this simulation. They got 4th this time.
Oh, Blues.
See, and
Gavin McKenna is a Blue.
And see, the problem there is that
Okay, our simulation shows here at the Randy Karraker
There
show.
could be-
at
there-
STL Sports
there-
Center, our simulation shows definitively
There
that the
will
Blues will
be-
have the number one pick.
There will be thousands of permutations of the Blues getting either the third or the
All we
fourth
need
pick.
is
And we just showed the Vancouver got 3, 3, and 4. Even when you're picking first, things can go very, very wrong. Now, of course, in this situation, if you don't pick first, the odds are not commiserate. I don't know.
Okay, so what I want to know from you, though, the viewing and listening audience, is do you like the way that we did the simulation here? Because I thought it was kind of fun.
Is it because the Blues won? Is that why you?
Yeah. Rock 2023 draft with Bedard. Ducks had the best chance for the first pick. Yeah.
The Blackhawks had the third best chance in the league that year, 11.5% chance, based on what I'm looking at right now. So I think if you're going to talk about them rigging the odds, it would have been like the Capitals with a 6% chance getting first overall, so they could put Bedard with Ovechkin to give him one last chance, or have Bedard, the potential of Bedard giving the assist to Ovechkin to break Gretzky's record. That would have been rigging the lottery. That would have been a pretty ridiculous chance. The Canadiens having the fifth best odds to win that lottery probably would have been a better thing for the. Although Chicago is a pretty good market, that's a pretty good point.
Yeah, it is. All those.
That's a pretty good point.
All those die-hard, lifelong since 2010 until 2020 Blackhawks fans. So the trade deadline is Friday, and as soon as the Blues make a move, we will react to it right here at STL Sports Central.
I think it's fair to say that at this point, if they trade Robert Thomas, the chances that we are happier with the return than we would have been with just keeping Robert Thomas is 6 to 7% is what I'm going to give it at.
Slim.
We're going to call it slim to none on that one. But if anyone can get the big move, it is Doug Armstrong, who right now is hopefully standing firm behind 3 top 15 picks or their relative comparative prospects.
Yep. And I do want to give you, because I've got it here, the teams that reportedly, and this isn't definitive because this is all speculative in reporting, but I do want you to know the teams that are interested in the guys that we're pretty sure are not going to be here on Friday. And the guys that we don't think are going to be here primarily are Justin Falk and Braden Shen. Well, Falk, I would say almost no chance of being here. Shen, a pretty good chance of being traded. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think Falk's, he's got to be gone. He's played too well for a playoff team not to see the opportunity of putting him in their top 4, letting him run some of the power play. It makes too much sense.
Teams that have either scouted or been reported to have interest in Falk include the Bruins, Oilers, Red Wings, Golden Knights, Senators, Hurricanes, and Mammoth. All of those possibilities. Shen, Bruins, Capitals, Senators, Golden Knights, and to an extent, and I'm really not buying it, Toronto, but I would say mainly Boston, Washington, Ottawa, and Vegas for Shen.
If he was an expiring deal, it'd be 100% in my mind. He'd be right next. He'd be right next to Falk in my. Yeah, he's gone. But the fact that he has 2 more years after this just complicates the whole thing. It complicates every part of it. It would complicate salary retention. It would complicate the trade. It complicates the return. It just complicates it too much. Something tells me that despite the fact that it would be ideal if he didn't have to be, Braden Shen's on the Blues to start the season.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to keep an eye on the NHL trade deadline for you. Well, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because we're going to touch on a little baseball here before we talk some college basketball. And
I just had the baseball topic coming up.
Oh, there we go.
That's all I had. That's all I had next.
At 3:45, we're going to talk to Rocco Miller, Rocco and Rocco. We're going to talk a little bracketology here and talk about Mizzou. They play tonight, if I'm not mistaken, right?
As does Illinois.
And then we're going to talk about St. Louis University as well. But want to touch on JJ Wetherholt as the leadoff man.
Yes, because Bernie Miklasz did a great video on STL Sports Central today talking about JJ Wetherholt as the leadoff, what it potentially could mean. We can get into that a little bit. I guess my question is, we always say don't react to spring, but we're seeing something from JJ Wetherholt, and I have to know, Randy, I'll let you kind of be the arbiter here and tell us, how much can we react to JJ Wetherholt's spring right now?
Well, because the Cardinals have such great belief in him, I think it's reasonable for us. This is not Matt Koperniak last year.
Okay.
All right. This is a guy that the Cardinals keep saying he's legit. He can play. And obviously his walks, his ability to get on base this spring training have shown us that he has that ability. And I don't think the Cardinals are at all concerned about him feeling the pressure that a young player feels at times. And I don't think the Cardinals are concerned about him falling off if he faces some adversity, although they weren't concerned about George Walker falling off.
I'm glad thank you for that qualifier.
Yeah, but it was a different regime. If they determine that their best guy to be the leadoff hitter is JJ Wetherholt, then he will be the leadoff hitter. Now, they might think ultimately that he would be the best number 3 hitter, and he might wind up being the best number 3 hitter. And then if you can put Scott at the top of the lineup, because they do want to run, they do want to be a little bit more athletic in 2026, you can do that. But it's not like JJ Wetherholt has no athleticism whatsoever. So if you could go Wetherholt, Wynn, Burleson, Herrera, and I get that we all talked. Well, you could go Wetherholt again, Herrera, Burleson, and Walker. There's a lot of different things they can do outside of the top 3. But if you want to hit JJ Wetherholt leadoff, there are a ton of possibilities behind him to make you build an offense that hopefully at some point will get better and more productive.
Skyboy might have gotten this from Bernie's video because he really laid down some great numbers on this. Getting on base has been JJ Wetherholt's game all along. Mm-hmm. He is destined to be the leadoff hitter.
The way the Cardinals play, Wetherholt Herrera kind of feels like a top 2 for the Cardinals, because what they want is they want obviously the ability to get on base, but the other thing they like is bat to ball skills, guys that don't strike out an awful lot, and those are 2 hitters that don't. So I would not be at all surprised if Ollie Marmol has gone to Chaim Bloom and said, look, on opening day, doesn't matter what happens during the spring, we're going to lead off with Wetherholt and we're going to hit Herrera second. I know that he likes Herrera second, and maybe there wasn't or isn't a real challenge to be the leadoff hitter. Once they got rid of Donovan, it might have been JJ Wetherholt's job for the taking.
Yeah. Bernie, again, laying down this topic really well, kind of broke out how Mason Wynn isn't a guy who looks comfortable right now as a leadoff hitter. Mm-hmm. Got to put him in a different spot. I'd be fine with putting him at 5 at this point if we're kind of building this roster, maybe kind of having him reset the table for a Nolan Gorman or a Jordan Walker a little bit later on down in the roster. I think that makes sense. Wetherholt leading off works as well. Also, this jumped out. I was listening to Foul Territory's coverage of the Cardinals yesterday, and we'll have some clips and quotes from them tomorrow. And the thing that jumped out to me was those JJ Wetherholt errors. We're talking to Ollie Marmol about them because he's been so consistent at second base. JJ Wetherholt came in, and we always talk about batters working on things. We talk about pitchers working on things. I had not even thought to consider this, but fielders also trying things. Apparently, both of those early errors, or at least 2 of his 3 early errors, I think it actually breaks down as, came because he's trying to work on his backhand fielding.
There you go.
And he apparently went to field 2 different balls backhanded. That kind of jumped on him a way he wasn't expecting, but he was literally working on something specific that then pops up in a box score and makes us go, oh, wait a second. Is this not what we thought it was real? In fact, all the other baseball you've seen is real. Spring training baseball continues to be fake. JJ Wetherholt is going to be just fine at second base.
I have no concern whatsoever. And that's where he's played most of his life anyway.
Yeah,
is at second base. He will not be the reason the Cardinals don't make the playoffs. His defense will not be the reason the Cardinals don't make the playoffs in 2026.
Lou Falsett, he says, Walker hitting 4th won't work. I don't have the quote right in front of us, but there was something interesting from Marmol yesterday because he was talking about Victor Scott and Mason Wynn, how they've been increasing and been getting better at the plate. Then he was talking about Jordan Walker in the same answer. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned how this is the first time Jordan Walker has felt comfortable and has been able to kind of verbalize his opinions in a mature way of saying, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable for me. How do we get me to do this thing in a different manner?
Mhm.
When you hear that kind of breakdown from Marmol about Jordan Walker, what's your reaction? Because mine, I'll tell you right now, just right off the bat, is that this isn't a guy, to Falsetti's point, this isn't a guy who opening day should be batting in the top half of your lineup.
It depends. Again, they know way more about what they want from this guy and what he's capable of giving them than I do. If he's hitting the ball hard and consistently, why wouldn't you give him an opportunity? Why wouldn't you say, okay, you were throughout your life a middle of the lineup hitter and you've hit the ball well during spring. Why would you not? Who's
has he
got
hit
a
the well?
better?
Has he
who's
hit
got
the
a
well
be-
this spring?
He hasn't been terrible.
It hasn't been terrible, but it sounds like a guy who still has a lot of work to get through. I'm not saying he should start in AAA or anything along those lines. It's just that to Lou's point, maybe a top half of the batting order spot isn't for him. Maybe, like I said, you put him 6th or 7th behind a Mason Wynn to kind of give him a nice little 1-2 pop.
And if that's what makes him better is giving him less at bats, then by all means, right?
It's we're talking like 30 at bats across 100 games. The difference between batting 6th and batting 4th.
Well, but you say he can't hit 4th, right?
I think I don't think it would be the best spot for him in the lineup.
And I don't think
he's a guy who clearly doesn't have a lot of confidence. He's gaining confidence. He's gaining that ability to know where he is, but he doesn't look like he clearly is locked in that same way.
And I don't think the Cardinals have completely evaluated him yet.
And they haven't given up on it either. That was the big thing that Marmol was saying again on Faltori Tori. He is far from giving up on this guy as well. And that's a big thing.
And so I think that's what you have to look at, because again, the Cardinals are not going to win. They aren't trying to win in 2026. They're trying to evaluate players and get individual players better. So are you better off for 2027 if you play, or 2028 getting Jordan Walker less time and trying to turn Mason Wynn into your number 4 hitter? Is Mason Wynn going to be your future number 4 hitter? Or do you want to try Velasquez as your number? Who's going to be your number 4 hitter in the future?
We talk about mindset and how that, and we, a week ago we were talking about the leadoff situation, and we acknowledge that a lot of rookies you're not going to want to have them be your leadoff hitter. JJ continues to show another week plus of this, and we have a different conversation. Is being the cleanup hitter not a similar kind of mindset that a young hitter is going to have about his role in the offense, where it potentially makes him think a little bit too much?
Well, he did it all his life, and he was great at it.
That's true.
Right? He was great at it until they said, well, after hitting in he hit in 12, didn't hit in 3, hit in 3 more. So he hits in 15 of his first 18 games in the majors, and they say, go down and change your swing for us.
It was a bad move by them. There's no doubt about that. But doing it your entire life is one thing. Doing it in the majors is another thing entirely. Mama does bring up a good point. If it's JJ, Herrera, Burley, 1, 2, 3, who the hell are you going to put it for? It has to be Walker.
Well, you could put a left-handed hitter in there, right?
They have plenty of those.
You could maybe Jimmy Crooks.
Okay. Now you're bringing me around to the Walker idea a little bit more.
So I'm just I don't think that, and
this is the conversations you have when you're going to be a mediocre team who has to lean on young players who haven't proven themselves. Yeah. These are the conversations we're going to have. At some point, they're going to have to take a leap of faith. And who else to do it with than the guy who's 6'5", 230 and has one of the highest bat speeds in the game. And we know the ball explodes off his bat. Sometimes it doesn't explode at the angle you'd like it to, but the things he can control, he's pretty good at.
Yeah, and you just at some point you've got to play the guy, and you've got to play him in, and he'll get it. He'll get 100. You play him in 90 out of 100 games, and you say, okay, this is where you either do it or you don't. And I think that's what the Cardinals are doing with both he and Gorman this year. Is they're getting real legitimate runway. They aren't going to send him down there and saying, "Oh, he's costing us because we aren't winning games."
I don't think I want to take it to that level. I think it is more still about mindset and approach. And I think we can acknowledge that there are different mindsets and approaches at different spots of the lineup. And that's my only thought. That's my only thought process on where you put Jordan Walker right now. And heck, let's talk about it. If he's going to be in your top 4, talking about mindset, talk about approach to the plate, is 4 the best spot, or would you be better putting him between Herrera and Burleson to give him a better pitch selection?
You could do that
and putting him at 3 instead.
Yeah,
I think if we're talking about him in the top 4 and giving him real game reps as much as possible and putting him in a position to succeed, putting him in between your best 2 hitters, changing how pitchers maybe have to look at him, maybe that's the most ideal way to use Jordan Walker, is even a little bit higher in the lineup and put him at 3.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. By the way, as we look back at last season, Jordan Walker, of all of the hitters in Major League Baseball, was number 24 in average exit velocity. His average exit velocity was 92.3. Number 1 was O'Neal Cruz at 95.8. Number 2 was Aaron Judge at 95.4. Judge at 95.4. Walker at 92.3.
It's an incredible stat. At the same time, you can also look at his expected batting average, and he was one of the worst hitters in the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
And his ability to square up the bat, 2nd percentile in the league. But when you see the exit velo, when you see the hard hit, when you see the fact that his bat speed's one of the quickest in the league, every team's going to think we can finally turn it around. And there's a lot of reasons they think they can turn around. If they can get him fixed, if Driveline could get him a little bit closer, there's a lot of things there. I just think that quote from Ali Marmol at this point in spring training, I think it jumped out to me a little bit.
Yeah, that he hasn't given up on him?
No, that's one positive, but that what they're seeing from him right now is still he's shown maturity, but that maturity is still in him communicating how he needs to get more comfortable. It's not a maturity necessarily at the plate, which I think is a conversation we'd like to see actually happen.
I will give you a number that I've given before, and I just don't think.
Sorry if you guys can hear the chair.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's been loud as hell today.
I don't think that we can point this out enough about Jordan Walker. This year in May, he's going to turn 24 years old. Granted, he's played at the major league level, never had a really consistent opportunity at the major league level, but he's going to turn 24 on May 22nd. Aaron Judge never took a major league at bat until he was 25. Didn't swing the bat at the major league level until he was 25. So I think a little bit of grace for Jordan Walker might be a positive.
That's fair.
Especially for a team that, again, does not expect to win in 2026.
Well, let's talk about some teams that do expect to win: the Missouri Tigers, the St. Louis Billikens, and the Fighting Illini.
And college basketball reporter and bracketologist Rocco Miller joins us on the Randy Karraker Show here on STL Sports Central with Matthew Rocchio. We've got Rocco. Rocco, great to have you with us. How you doing?
Yeah, it's great to be on with you guys. I'm doing well. Happy Tuesday. It's March.
Yeah,
it can't be better.
So, all right, let's start with the elephant in the room here in St. Louis, and it's the last couple of weeks of the St. Louis University Billikens. How have the last couple of weeks, and granted a couple of road losses, how has that affected the Billikens in terms of bracketology?
Well, it's been a little bit painful. You know, of course, the biggest thing for the Billikens is just getting in the dance. It's hard enough to do when you're not in a power conference. So I think on that side of things are rosy and fine. Billikens will be part of the NCAA tournament. So that is good. That's the best and most important news. Outside of that, where we were a couple weeks ago was St. Louis as a solid, 6 seed is where I had them multiple times. With some breaks, they could work their way up to a 5. I don't know if 4 was ever going to be in the cards, but even from a 5 seed, you're feeling very good, or a 6 even, about your chances to get to a second weekend. That initial loss to Rhode Island took the Billikens down to a 7 seed almost organically, just based on the damage it did to the resume a little bit. And then, of course, the comparisons, they started to lose to teams like Villanova, Wisconsin, UCF, et cetera. And then, of course, this last loss to Dayton on the road. Not a bad loss. Dayton's basically a quad 1 team. But again, it some of the shine and the sparkle of being, we were looking at St. Louis for so much of this year as basically an undefeated team that lost on like a fluky play to Stanford. And now the committee and myself and anybody else who looks at that, at this stuff is like, okay, we've seen this team lose by double digits now. Where should we really be seeding them? it puts everything into question again in some cases. Although I tend to rely more on I've seen the Billikens roll. This team is great. It's a long season. They're in the dog days of the Atlantic 10. That's what I truly believe personally. But I think there's going to be some wear and tear within the committee room on where they actually land. And in my own exercise, they're now an 8 seed. So kind of as a college basketball fan, like that's kind of hell. You don't want to be in an 8-9 game because your chances couldn't be worse to make the Sweet 16. You're going to have to play a 1 seed. We know this year the 1 seeds are Michigan, Duke, Arizona, and Connecticut. Don't exactly want to play them in the first weekend, but you are going to have to beat them at some point. So if you look at it that way, it might not be so bad.
So let's project for the Billikens. They have 2 more regular season games, like everybody does. What we're going to talk about. So let's say they get to 28-3 out of the regular season. Let's say they win their first 2 games in the A10 tournament, but then lose in the A10 championship. That would be a 30-4 Billikens team with that big 3-0 next to their name. Does that get them back out of the 8 seed line and into a 7, or is it still a question where maybe, but if other things are going to have to play in their favor?
Yeah, well, they did have a non-Division I game against Principia on December 28th. And so that would, just to be technical, the committee will look at that as 29-4. It doesn't make a huge difference. Obviously, locally and publicly celebrate the 30 wins. But the seeding question is as straightforward as it comes. The area of the bracket in terms of seeding right now that St. Louis is in, there's a lot of teams coming and going. Like UCF goes and wins a big game, then they lose at home to Baylor. Miami's been hot lately, but they still have a couple hard games to go. They lose. They're clearly behind St. Louis. Utah State, if they fall again, they'll fall below. So this whole exercise is just comparing St. Louis to a bunch of these other teams. On the other end of it, you have Clemson, who plays at North Carolina tonight. They could, of course, jump St. Louis. Teams like Georgia and Missouri, who we'll talk about in a minute, could also jump St. Louis because they have the opportunities in those leagues to do so. But I think when it's all said and done, enough of the teams in this area consistently are inconsistent, if that makes sense, to the point where I do feel good St. Louis would at least work their way up to a 7. And I think the exciting thing about that is when we've gone through this exercise throughout the last 5 to 7 weeks, we consistently have at least one of the pods, sometimes both of the pods for the 2, 7, 10, 15 to be played in St. Louis. So I think it starts to get really exciting again if St. Louis can play back to a 7, because their chances get near 50%, or maybe it is 50%, that they'll be able to play at home.
Hey, Rocco, just a question in general. This is kind of a global question, but SLU has only played 3 quad 1 games this year. You look at the 4 that you project as the number ones. UConn has played 10. Arizona's played 16. Michigan has played a dozen. And Duke has played 13-2. But I have to think that teams that get a call from SLU, big-time teams, they aren't going to want to play them. I don't know how SLU finds a way to play more quad 1 games, because especially after this season, if you are UConn or if you're Arizona, do you really want to play St. Louis University and take a chance at losing?
In general, absolutely, you wouldn't. You wouldn't in general. I think the one exception that came up a couple of years ago was when Florida Atlantic had a team similar to St. Louis. They end up going from a 9 seed to the Final Four. And then the next summer, all of a sudden overnight, everybody wants to play Florida Atlantic. We got Florida Atlantic, a game against Arizona in Vegas. Florida Atlantic got invited to a Walt Disney tournament with some of the top 10 teams. Basically everything changed, but a big reason why was they had the combination of a great run to the Final Four, and then they brought a lot of those guys back. If St. Louis hits a grand slam as a program, not only makes a great tournament run, I think even a Sweet 16 run is probably just as hard as what Florida Atlantic did, because Florida Atlantic got to play the 16 seed in the second round, Fairleigh Dickinson. I love that team. I think they could have gone anyway. This Dusty May guy turned out to be pretty good, right? But I think it was just even in 3 years, the sport has changed so much. The chances of you being able to keep a lot of these guys who still have eligibility and keeping coach shirts and all that would be a grand slam. And if you're able to do all that, you can get the schedule next year, I promise. But if assuming that some of those things don't go St. Louis's way, either a run in March, losing coach, losing the players, you're back to square one with everything, kind of like how this year was, where you're maybe just because what the Power 5 teams are looking at is it's a risk management exercise.
Mhm.
And the majority of, if you're not Tom Izzo and you're not, Matt Painter at Purdue, a lot of these guys with job security for the rest of their life, Bill Self, most of them don't have that. They're worried about getting fired, so they won't play St. Louis, period, because they have the power to say no. And they will, if they know St. Louis will be a top 30 team next year. That's my whole point here. Then yes, they can get the games, but the chances of that, like I said, it's either a grand slam or they got to hit it inside straight, whatever analogy you want to use there.
Let's move on to the Missouri Tigers. They're in action tonight, facing off against Oklahoma. Your last time that you updated your seed list on bracketeer.org, you had them in the but not by much category. They went on to beat the crap out of Mississippi State, and they still have a potential ranked matchup against Arkansas on their schedule. What does the ceiling and floor look like for you for the Missouri Tigers right now?
Yeah, and good news. I haven't hit publish on today's update, but they are in the in safely category now. So good news for Tiger fans there. They've played well lately, and right now they've created an opportunity. They have 2 quad 1 games this week. Obviously, at Oklahoma is not a tournament level opponent, but Oklahoma's played pretty well lately. It's clearly a quad 1 road opportunity. It'd be very beneficial to the resume to get that win tonight, and then they host Arkansas with an opportunity to split the series with the Hogs, and the Hogs are also a quad 1 home game. So you finish with those 2. We already kind of talked about that level of the bracket right now, 6, 7, 8 range where St. Louis is. That's where I think Missouri has the opportunity to maybe even pass St. Louis by the end of the week. We'll have to re-examine always on Sunday to see what the rest of the country did. But I think there's a real opportunity for Missouri still to get up to a 6, especially if they win early in the SEC tournament when the committee's probably still taking into account those early results. Typically, they wrap up the work by Saturday in the voting, but we'll see how it goes this year. Every year they tell us that they're still paying attention, but there's not a lot of evidence to that. So I think that's the high end for Mizzou. I think the downside, of course, is they lose these 2 games, and there are scenarios where they would then be in the 9 seed for the SEC tournament, which is a big break in their bracket. If you look at the SEC tournament bracket, the top 4 get double buys, then the 5 through 8 gets a bye. So you don't want to get 9th. If you get 9th, then you might have to play South Carolina, the 16 seed in the tournament. And you always have to look at the worst case scenario, right, guys? So if Missouri were to be in the 9 seed and play South Carolina and lose to South Carolina, now they're adding a quad 3 loss to the pile. Not necessarily ideal. Not a lot to gain from that win either. So that's the scenario on the downside. That could send Missouri all the way back to the in not by much category. I think they're going to get in at this point, but there's still a scenario where they go all the way down to an 11 seed and maybe even have to start the tournament in Dayton if they were to lose those 2 and then take a loss like South Carolina type of loss. You
touched on something interesting there, and we even got a chat kind of alluding to it as well. Where do you stand right now in the Sunday championship games, and how much the committee does or does not take those into consideration?
Yeah, basically meaningless. It's sad to say, but it's basically meaningless. It's meaningful, of course, for the Atlantic 10 because the champions go into the tournament, and most years, especially lately, they've had to get the auto bid to get in. And it'll be awesome if it happens with St. Louis versus VCU or St. Louis versus somebody from the other side of the bracket because for the conference, I don't think it's going to impact St. Louis's seed by that point. And I also think that the league will have a great opportunity to get another bid to the tournament. But I think leagues like the Big Ten, we've seen Michigan a few years back, they go on a tear and get a ton of big wins, and they were still a 7 seed at the end of the week. It's really just clear that the voting was done earlier in the week and those results were not applied. Now, again, I get to chat with committee members all year. I'm fortunate to be able to do that because I really only care what they value, and I'm trying to educate the public on what's coming. And they keep telling us that they're gonna wait further in the week, but I just think it's impossible because they have to be ready for that show on the Sunday. They have to TV network has some input on some of the game times and networks. And you've probably noticed in the last couple of years when the bracket comes out, there's really no delay. They have the TV assignments, the announcing teams, everything ready to go within an hour of the bracket coming out. So it's clearly a coordinated effort in those last 24 hours. There's not a whole lot of rearranging going on. They do have to create about 8 to 10 contingency brackets depending on if there's bid steals or not, but that's actually takes just seconds for them with the technology they have in Indianapolis. So it's pretty fascinating. But unfortunately, it's not a situation where, like, if VCU gets to Sunday, they can suddenly be an at-large team if they were on the bubble. I think that vote would have happened by Friday night or Saturday morning.
Hey, Rocco, the Illini have lost 4 of 6. How much has that affected their standing as we head into the tournament?
Yeah, well, luckily for Illinois, they're still a 2 seed in my projection, and it's mainly because of their head-to-head results. They have a win at Purdue. They have a win over Texas Tech. They have a win over they did lose to Michigan State, so there's an argument there, but it was at Michigan State. So these are the teams that are right next to Illinois, and it's really hard when you've seen Illinois go to Mackey and win, when you've seen them go to Nebraska and win, even though they lost at home to Nebraska. That's kind of a wash. But I think overall, Illinois is better in the metrics from a power ranking perspective. And you've seen them beat Texas Tech earlier this year. Those teams are right next to them. And so it helps Illinois a lot, even though they have the 7 losses. And now they finish up with Oregon and Maryland. Obviously, take care of your business this week if you're the Illini. And they should be in great shape to get to a 2 seed.
Yeah, that's the kind of my big question with the Illini. Just your thoughts on them being the 2 seed in St. Louis. You had them in I know you haven't hit publish yet. In your previous one, you had them right there as your 8th overall seed. So right there on that line of falling out of the 2. Do you think, where do you put the chances of them being number 2 in St. Louis?
I think it's still pretty realistic because it's, again, like the head-to-head matters a lot this year. There were so many good non-conference games. That, like with Texas Tech, they played them in Champaign. So that's kind of the wild card. Texas Tech goes to BYU to finish. That would be another strong win while Illinois is not playing elite teams this week. So that'd be a tough evaluation if Texas Tech wins at BYU and they beat TCU at home tonight. That's a team that's obviously got great wins. They just won at Iowa State. They're the only team to do it. They've won at Arizona. They're doing it without JT Toppin. So Texas Tech's the real wild card in the mix. But I think with Purdue, it's going to be really hard for Purdue to pass Illinois right now because they played once. It was in Purdue's building. Illinois was the better team. Gonzaga is not going to have the opportunities to play their way back above Illinois, in my opinion, even if they win the WCC tournament. And Nebraska, I just don't see the runway there. They have an Iowa game at home, but I don't think that's enough juice to pass Illinois because Illinois just way too strong in the overall power numbers. And the other thing is, if you watch that last Nebraska-Illinois game, guys, Illinois was dominant. And it really kind of made little doubt of who was better. The first game was Nebraska got a huge lead in the first half. Illinois came all the way back. I think if Illinois had 2 more minutes to play, they win the game. They ran out of time, lose on a late 3, and lose by 3. So I don't think Nebraska can pass them either.
One last question here to finish it out. Going back to the Tigers really quickly, it's been a very different second half of the season for them. They had the injuries for the Illinois game and the Kansas game. They have a different point guard than they had when they started the season. Trent Burns is now apparently going to be a key cog. How much do those kind of actual, X's and O's changes that are substantial in a season, how much of that is taking into account when we talk about these teams instead of just the record? Will those be active parts of the conversation for a team like Mizzou?
Yeah, they definitely should be, at least initially in the meetings, because player availability is a huge thing, especially this year. I mean, you look at JT Toppin at the top of the sport. You have Wilson over at North Carolina. You got the Darren Peterson saga at Kansas. It's a long list. And when the bracket preview show came on CBS with the actual committee chairman, Keith Gill, they went through an entire graphic of player availability, making the public aware that this is going to be discussed and valued. And what they've done over the last couple of decades, guys, is they basically want to know who you're bringing to the tournament. So in Missouri's example, great job, Matt, on the recap there. In Missouri's example, it's only going to benefit them. Because if they do a deep dive on Mizzou, they're going to say, okay, we like the progress of this team. Now it's important Missouri finishes strong to continue that narrative into the actual discussions. The committee won't meet until a week from tomorrow, starting next Wednesday. So that's the timeline. So Missouri has a big week if they want to carry that narrative and get a little bit of help because of all the changes in the lineup. But it's not going to hurt them because if they have this team going into March Madness, that's how they're evaluated. And I think there's other teams you could probably think of that maybe lost a player late, like Richie Saunders at BYU, another good example, where they're going to be evaluated pretty harshly, I think, if anything.
Hey, Rocco, before we let you go, how can people access your information?
Yeah, thank you. Bracketeer.org is the site that I own and operate for all things bracketology, but we also do non-conference schedules all summer long. If you're really into the weeds, like with scheduling, like your first question today, please follow along all year long, because we have stuff on there that it will not be public information. And I'm also helping out with all 31 leagues with their scheduling, which is why we get permission sometimes to share some of that. So appreciate all the support for the website. And then also I'm on Field of 68 Mondays and Fridays, 5 Eastern, breaking down brackets. And if you like mid-major basketball, like the SIU Edwardsville level and that level below the A10, we have a mid-major show every Thursday, 5 Eastern. Check that out. And outside of that, I'll be on a bunch of things like this all the way till Selection Sunday. It's always a fire drill, and loving every second of it.
Go Lindenwood Lions.
Let's go Lindenwood. First year eligible, Matt. Let's go.
There it is.
There you
Rocco,
go.
thank you so much for your time, sir.
Great stuff.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys. This was fun.
Thank you, Rocco Miller, joining us. And great material. Wow.
SLU fans, get on to bracketeer.org, put in your bookmarks, because Randy laid it out. They're going to be potentially building up that non-conference schedule. Rocco said it. If they can be a top 30 team, teams are going to are going to be willing to take that risk of it being a good win if they can win and not a terrible loss. So if the Billikens are that high, the conference schedule potentially becomes an interesting thing. Bracketeer.org is where you can kind of watch it throughout the summer.
Yeah, great stuff. And we appreciate you being a part of the Randy Karraker Show here at STL Sports Central. Great job as always, Matthew.
Thank you, Randy.
And we will be back at it tomorrow. Thanks to Wilson for getting us on the air, and have a great evening.